What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. We're talking today about AEW Dynamite's crazy week this week, including AEW Dynamite, a little bit of a review, and a little bit of a look forward to what's coming up in probably one of the biggest weeks in AEW's history that's coming up next week. Before we get into that, I want to remind you guys, as always, that I got a lot of free goodies down for you down in the description box below. If you want to do a little adulting, I guess it is, but you want a 30-day free trial of Amazon? Down in the description box below. You want a 30-day free trial of Audible? Down in the description box below. You can get 2 free stocks from Webull. Each could be worth up to $2,300 at the most, about $9 to $10 at the least. Basically free money. Description box below. If you want to get some free crypto from BlockFi or Celsius, which you might want to start doing now before things get a little crazy considering what the government's doing, link down in the description box below. Check out any of those links. I definitely appreciate it, and you might as well get yourself some free stuff while you can. AEW just seems like it just is not going to stop. Like, they got some momentum, and you would think they would kind of back off a little bit, take a break. No. We got some other stuff coming up next week. The Arthur Ashe show, which has been promoted for a while now, is coming up next week. It's going to be basically 4 hours of content that they're going to be taking from the show, and they're going to be spreading it out of 2 hours on Dynamite and a special 2-hour edition of AEW Rampage next Friday night from 10 to midnight. So there's going to be a lot going on, and this episode of Dynamite was to set up a lot of that stuff that's coming up next week. One of the things to point out on this week's edition of Dynamite was that CM Punk was giving commentary. One of the things that he pointed out was that the AEW ring apparently is a little bit different than the normal wrestling ring. That apron, which we know is the hardest part of the ring, is a little bit harder in AEW. We also found out that Punk was instrumental in getting one of the performers in the first match into wrestling himself. Adam Cole Bebe apparently was influenced by CM Punk to get into wrestling, and he would take on the Bullet Club, whoa, sorry, not the Bullet Club, the Elite Hunter, Frankie Kazarian. I'm just going to go on record as saying that the Elite Hunter, Frankie Kazarian, is about 1,000 times better than the old Bullet Club Hunter, Yoshitatsu, because Frankie Kazarian's a better wrestler and they're booking him a lot better. But Kazarian and Adam Cole had a tremendous match to start out AEW Dynamite. A lot of back and forth in this match. Kazarian had pretty much scouted everything that Adam Cole had done, vice versa. They would counter each other's stuff, and it was really a kind of a game of who was going to get the last shot in, and that would go to Adam Cole. After Adam Cole defeated Kazarian, he then would go on to announce that he and the Super Clique, which is him and the Young Bucks, were going to challenge some people he didn't like, Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express, to a trios match, which will be happening next Friday on AEW Rampage. This will be the first of many big announcements that night. Now, later on, Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express had a backstage interview where Christian Cage basically gave the internet a bunch of stuff to talk about, where he said that, you know, hey, maybe they're better friends than we are because, you know, the Young Bucks rescued Adam Cole from developmental. Yikes. He also talked about how Cole's used to losing Wednesday Night Wars, so you might as well lose one on Friday as well. So, shots fired. You know, this kind of stuff is funny to me. I know there's some people that go, that talking about WWE, it hurts me personally. It doesn't hurt me personally. I don't care. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. So it's pretty funny to me. I think it's going to be a pretty good trios match next week. It should be an amazing trios match, actually, when you think about the 6 people involved in it. And of course, you got Marco Stunt running around the ring, and probably that Brandon Cutler is probably going to be trying to spray little Marco Stunt with the cold spray. It's going to be kind of crazy, but that was the first of many things for this week on Dynamite. Some other big notable moments. We had CM Punk, who did commentary for most of the night, really kind of getting into the Suzuki incident, which I didn't talk about before because it was, I didn't know what AEW was going to do about it. It was disrespectful in a sense, because anybody who's a New Japan fan knows that part of Minoru Suzuki's whole thing is the crowd chanting along Kaze ni Nare for his ring entrance. It does make his ring entrance pretty long, which was a problem last week because they were short on time on Dynamite. They were running out of time to have the match, so they cut his music short. So people were upset about it. Apparently Suzuki was a bit miffed about it, but they made up for it this week. We had a promo with Lance Archer, who is now teaming with Suzuki, and they have effectively brought Suzuki-gun into AEW. In fact, there's more Suzuki-gun it feels more like Suzuki-gun is in AEW than it is over in New Japan right now. I didn't know, too, that it seems like that's the reason that Suzuki kind of bailed on that last 6-man tag match. I saw him in New Japan, which was just a couple weeks ago. He was teaming with the Dangerous Tekkers, and they won the 6-man match, but by the time the referee had raised Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi's hands, Suzuki was already gone. He was already packing up his bags and getting ready to come over to America. So he's apparently really wild about this. And it's fun to see Minoru Suzuki, again, like I said, one of the major New Japan guys now, actually in AEW, and teaming up with Archer again. That would come back to haunt some people later on in the show. FTR took on Dante and Sydal. Dante Martin, he's just so amazing. That guy is going to be, I mean, he's so young and so talented, the way he does all of his crazy stuff. And him with Sydal is a great tag team. Now, I'm not sure what happened to Matt Sydal's brother, why that wasn't a thing, but I guess they're trying to get Dante Martin over because he turned a lot of eyeballs, which I'm going to talk about a little bit about how that works in AEW apparently. But FTR, this was kind of them reestablishing themselves as a major tag team, as top guys in the tag division. They did win the match. And it was cool to see Dash, I always call him Dash and Dawson, Dax and whatever. It's good to see FTR kind of reaffirming their tag team talents and showing the world once again why they are one of the best tag teams in the world. Dan Lambert came out and he started running down the AEW audience again. He basically is channeling Jim Cornette at this point and just making fun of the flips and some guy going up to the top and crashing through 85 tables, and all the fans here are beta males, and you know, they're all, you know, you can tell who's the most popular wrestler because all of their t-shirts are sold out in men's small and women's extra large and all this stuff. So he's basically ragging on the AEW audience with stuff that we've heard and that is definitely going to trigger the AEW audience. He's in there with a lot of very powerful people. Like, the crew that Lambert is in, like, legitimately speaking, could probably beat the crap out of everybody in AEW, to be honest with you. But the main focus here is the Men of the Year, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. Now, who came out was a bit of a surprise. Chris Jericho and Jake Hager of the Inner Circle came out, and this apparently is going to be the next program that's going to go forward. And when the Lambert thing started, I didn't know where they were going with it, but now seeing what's happening, I'm very intrigued as to what's going on. The promo between Jericho and Lambert was awesome too. Lambert was talking about how nobody really knew the Judas lyrics, which the crowd then effectively went and did the entire first couple of stanzas and the entire chorus to prove him wrong. Jericho talked about, you know, the American top team and like who's topping, essentially, which is, if you don't know what that means, that's kind of a reference to people, you know, it's a reference to gay sex. And the guy that's on bottom takes it. He's the receiver, he's the bottom, and the guy on top is the top. So that was a pretty nice a dig there at some dangerous guys and women that were in that ring. But effectively, this is going to lead to a match between the Men of the Year against Jericho and Hager. That's also coming up on next week's shows for AEW. Now, the one intriguing thing I thought about immediately is because Jake Hager, it's cool to have Jake Hager on the opposite side of Lambert's people, because Hager, as we all know, is an undefeated Bellator fighter. Is that a possibility that Hager might turn on Jericho and join this Lambert crew? Keep my eye out for that. That's a possibility we might see. I don't know, but I just thought about it. Things continue to go crazy throughout the rest of the night because, as we knew what was going to happen, as soon as they said CM Punk was doing commentary, we knew Taz would come out. Taz came out with his son Hook. They confronted CM Punk. You could kind of see this coming because Powerhouse Will Hobbs was nowhere to be seen, and then all of a sudden Powerhouse came in from behind, hit CM Punk in the back, picked up Punk, and tried to powerbomb him through a table. Now, Excalibur later said that the table was Lexan, so that probably really sucked to take if you were seeing. I have Lexan right over there. You can't see it, it's off camera. But Lexan ain't like a table, you know, that's why a table didn't break. So that probably really hurt for CM Punk being slammed on the Lexan table. But that's again to set up CM Punk's first match in 7 years, which will be next week on AEW Rampage. Punk will be taking on Powerhouse Will Hobbs. And possibly the main event of that show. I'm not sure what the main event's going to be, but yeah, it's I was a little lukewarm to this feud when they started it last week, but I think this is exactly what Punk said he wanted to do, and this is going to help out, again, giving the rub to some of these younger, lesser-known stars. Speaking of younger, lesser-known stars, Billy Gunn and the Gun Club, which is his two sons, they had a pre-recorded promo where they explain why they turned on Big Show, Paul White, which a lot of people have forgotten about that. With all the stuff that happened at All Out, it's easy to forget that they turned on Paul White in that throwaway match with QT Marshall. But they explain basically that any combination of the Gun Club, whether it's Billy's sons teaming together, Billy with either one of his sons, or the three of them as a trio, have been undefeated for a very long time in AEW, but they haven't been getting any respect. Basically meaning they haven't been featured a lot on Dynamite or Rampage. They haven't gotten any tag title shots or anything like that. So they turned on Paul White in order to bring some attention to themselves. Marginally worked, but I think, to go back to the Dante Martin thing, is like, I think a lot of people are kind of like wondering why this is, and it doesn't make any sense or whatever. I think the idea is, if the Gun Club, if either one of Billy Gunn's sons can perform some like miraculous feat of strength against Paul White, to have like kind of like this highlight moment, then that would help them kind of elevate in the eyes of the fans, the same way, you know, Dante Martin had those big breakout matches that made him popular with the fans. Same thing with 2.0 and a lot of these other guys. You got to go for the big guns in order to do that. Now, even though Paul White is not a big major star, he's not a main eventer in AEW, he is a giant man. So them doing some sort of feat of strength against this giant man would help to improve the profile of the Gun Club. That's the point of this whole thing, so we'll have to see how well they can execute this. We then come to what I consider to be match of the night, which was Darby Allin versus Shawn Spears. Spears is really, I don't know if it's because he's teaming up with Tully Blanchard and he's learned a lot from Tully, but Spears is such a disgusting heel. He is such an ass of a heel. Man, and he was put the Scorpion Deathlock on Darby Allin in front of Sting and was mocking Sting the whole time, kept getting in Sting's face, kept throwing around and cheating and being just dirty and nasty during the entire match. I mean, man, this is really good. Darby Allin, of course, is one of the fastest rising stars. I wouldn't be surprised if Darby Allin wins Most Popular Wrestler of the Year this year. I would not be surprised. He's definitely in contention for it. I wouldn't be surprised if he won it. He did win this match, though, after, again, proving he's the best bump machine in AEW by taking a couple really nasty bumps in this match. One where Spears kind of clipped him on the apron, and Darby was supposed to do a rotation, but he got a little off and a little over-rotated and landed right on his neck. Like, nasty. I thought he broke his neck for a second. That is a fear of Darby Allin, is that he's going to go a little bit too far and really hurt himself. I call it the Will Osprey bump from now on the apron with the neck. Reminded me of that Osprey bump from several years ago in that match with Marty Scurll, where it just looked horrible, and you don't need to do that. But again, like I said, Darby won the match, but after this, FTR came out and they attacked Darby and Sting, got the advantage on them, and much as Spears said earlier in the match, wiped off Darby's face paint with a wet towel. Tully Blanchard got in here and said he was going to get in Sting's face. That's a feud that goes back a long, long time, even though Tully wasn't really a major, like the major feud between Sting and Horseman happened in 1990, long after Tully Blanchard had left the WCW NWA territory. But initially when Sting came in, there was about a year or two where Tully was as part of the Horsemen, and one of their targets was Sting in the old NWA Crockett territory. But he took his own towel, wiped the face paint off of Sting. And so again, this is setting up another match: FTR versus Sting and Darby. The cards that they have for next week are amazing. FTR is going to take on Sting and Darby Allin. I want to see that so bad. I wonder if, again, it's another speculative thing, will Sting and Darby Allin come out for that match without the face paint? Another thing to kind of keep in mind that AEW, because I got to think out of the box with AEW, because AEW has been kind of being ahead of the audience and ahead of us here on YouTube and podcasts. So you start trying to have to think a little bit more out of the box about what AEW might be doing. And that's one thing that could be cool if Darby and Sting really come out without face paint next week to take on FTR. I'm going to keep an eye on that. If they do it, I'm going to take credit for it. No, I'm kidding. But if they do it, it would be really cool. So that's set up on yet another big major match up for Dynamite and for Rampage next week. We had a lot of other matches set up for it, not only next week, but also this week on Rampage. Fuego del Sol is putting up the card that he just bought from his AEW contract against Miro for the TNT Championship. Fuego, like, I think the setup for this is to get Sammy Guevara set up to be the next major challenger for Miro for the TNT Championship. But Fuego's going to get his butt kicked on Friday, and it's set up for good stuff. We just want to see it happen. Also, we got the Butcher who's back. So the Butcher and the Blade are back in action. They are going to be the first challengers for the Lucha Brothers and the AEW Tag Team Championships. That's also coming up on Friday. My God, Friday for Dynamite, for Rampage. So all of that got set up. But the biggest thing that got set up this night was we had Bryan Danielson come into the ring with Tony Schiavone, who, once again, halfway through the interview, gets kicked out of the poor Tony, gets kicked out of the interview. And Kenny Omega and Don Callis come out. We definitely earned, between this and the Lambert Jericho segments, we definitely earned the TV-14 rating with the number of S-bombs that were dropped in these segments. You know, Don Callis said, you know, yeah, people call me a carny piece of S. I'm trying to keep it clean for YouTube nowadays. But Bryan said, you know, you are. Then Callis started running his mouth again, and then Daniel Bryan said, just shut up, you piece of S. So it really got to is Bryan didn't want to challenge for the AEW Championship. He doesn't deserve it, obviously. It's his first match in, which is a cool thing, I think. But he wanted to go up against Omega in kind of an exhibition match to see who's the best. And he didn't want the clown Kenny Omega. He doesn't want the Omega with the goofy outfits and the Fu Manchu and all the silliness. He wants the best bout machine. He wants 2017 New Japan Kenny Omega, which a lot of us do. And that's what he's going to get, because Omega accepted the match, best bout machine. We immediately, after commercial break, get it announced that Kenny Omega will be taking on Bryan Danielson in a non-title match as basically the main event for next week's Rampage at Arthur Ashe Stadium. That is going to be amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, the speculation on that, and I tend to agree with this, is that how do you book the finish on that match? You don't want Bryan Danielson losing his first match in AEW, but Kenny Omega also just lost another non-title match, what, a little over a month ago, less than a month ago, to Christian Cage for the Impact Championships. Do you want him losing again on TV in this close a time frame? So the thought is, from a lot of people I've seen, and I agree with this, is that it might wind up being a time limit draw between the two, because again, this isn't a title match. So it could be a 20-minute time limit match or TV time remaining kind of a match. And a lot of people, some people are groaning about this, but I go back to the best time limit draw I've ever seen in my life, which was between Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega at New Japan's Dominion show back in 2017, which was, if anybody hasn't seen that match, you gotta watch that match. That match is dramatically amazing. If there are two guys that can make a time limit draw work, it is Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega's already proven it. So I'm curious to see. The booking in that match is going to be very intriguing. And where is it going to lead to the future? We got Full Gear coming up in about 2 months. That's a long time in AEW, because AEW switches up storylines a lot. So we'll see how that pans out. Then they just start announcing all the matches they got coming up over their next 3 shows, the next 2 Rampages and the next Dynamite. And it's just like they're just dropping bombs all over the place. Sting and Darby Allin versus FTR. We got the Super Click against Jurassic Express and Christian Cage. We got Jericho and Jake Hager against Men of the Year. We got the announcement that Ruby Soho is going to get her title shot against Britt Baker for the AEW Women's Championship as part of the Arthur Ashe shows. We had, and I gotta talk about this too, MJF taking on Brian Pillman Jr. I'm definitely going to talk about that. And we have CM Punk's first match in 7 years against Powerhouse Will Hobbs. I mean, there's so much. I'm even forgetting stuff, but there's so much that they have jam-packed. And that's not even including Rampage tonight on Friday. AEW is just knocking it out of the park. I try to temper my excitement for it because I'm trying to not be too much of a fanboy for them, but they're just running on, they're running on all cylinders. And anytime a company's running on all cylinders and they're just firing off like they are, like I was like this a couple years ago in New Japan when they were just firing off on all cylinders, and every time you turn around they were doing something amazing. WWE's about 10 years ago when they were firing off on all cylinders, it's like, man, they just keep coming up with good stuff week after week after week. It doesn't matter to me what company it is. When a company's got momentum, I'm all for it. I'm gonna get excited about it because I'm a pro wrestling fan, and this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to actually be excited about watching wrestling shows. So thank you, AEW, for being the current hottest promotion in the world this year. But we weren't finished with Dynamite, and we weren't finished with next week's booking because Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer decided to crash the party. Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley were taking on 2.0 in the main event of the show. Handily defeated 2.0, but Suzuki came out, did get his full music, did get the Kaze ni Nare that half the AEW audience knows. Archer comes out of the crowd, beats up and they just get into this brawl that ends the show. So that match is also now added to next week's cavalcade of amazing matchups for this Arthur Ashe Stadium. It's good. I almost envy everybody who's going to that show next week. You are in for a treat. That should be 4 fun hours of wrestling. I did want to end with this one thing though, with 2 things with this. First, with the Archer thing. Archer is, I've noticed, because everything's not great in AEW, Archer is having the hardest time booking Lance Archer. Remember, the Men of the Year thing with Dan Lambert was originally with Lance Archer as a face. He got beat up by Men of the Year, and they just kind of dropped that. Now they put him with Suzuki. Jake the Snake Roberts is nowhere to be seen, so they're having a hard time with him. Hopefully, I think if they can get some Suzuki Goon kind of tie-in here, maybe bring in a couple guys in every so often and to team them up with Lance Archer. It's too bad they can't get Davey Boy Smith Jr. because he's now with WWE, but Archer needs something. You know, he's a great talent. It just seems to be very hard for them to book him right now. Somebody that's not hard for them to book is MJF. And MJF came out and gave this promo earlier in the show where he just bypassed Brian Pillman Jr., said he wanted to talk to Brian Pillman, and looked up and was like, well, who am I kidding? He looked down. This is all working off the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, and basically said that Brian Pillman's probably in hell, which MJF is, gotta be the most hated wrestler. I talked about Darby Allin possibly being the most popular wrestler of the year. MJF, hands down, has to win most hated wrestler of the year or heel of the year. He is so good at being terrible. And Pillman Jr. came out through the crowd, tried to attack. Wardlow kind of intercepted a little bit. They're still playing with this Wardlow MJF thing, which they've been playing with for over a year now, about Wardlow eventually turning on MJF. And it'd be really interesting to hear the story as to why Wardlow keeps taking all his crap from MJF. But Pillman Jr. eventually ran him off. He had a good backstage interview, probably the best interview I've seen him have in AEW. And Brian Pillman Jr. can cut good promos. I've seen him cut good promos when he was in MLW. So he's finally kind of coming into his own here in AEW. So that was AEW Dynamite from this week. There was a lot of stuff that I haven't touched on, the Dark Order stuff and the Anna Jay stuff and all that. And, you know, there was a match with Jade Carthill. She had a great match with legit Layla Hirsch. It's just so much packed. Oh, God, and I forgot this part. There's another part I forgot. Rosario Dawson got involved with Malachi Black in his promo where he referred to the audience as the House of Black. She was outed as being a dissenter in the ring. So she came out, hopped the barricade, and basically hopped on Malachi Black. Rosario Dawson's awesome. The thing about her is she's a very extremely attractive woman. I've seen her in so much stuff, from the 25th Hour. She was in Kids, if any of you know that movie from back in I think it was the late 90s, the Kids movie, where she was a kid literally in that movie. She's been in so much stuff. She was in the Marvel Netflix series. She's in everything. And apparently she's now one of the judges on the Go Big Show with Cody Rhodes, which is how we get the tie-in here. Cody comes through the crowd. Him and Malachi Black fight up, hitting each other with plastic beer cups and everything else, which was a pretty good visual. So again, another major crazy thing that happened on the show. AEW is so loaded with so much stuff, and amazingly enough, you know, I remember about 8 months ago, I was complaining that, you know, they're a little unbalanced in how they book the shows with all these people, but they found their rhythm, and it's like these 2 hours just fly by with so much stuff, but it all makes sense. It's all adequate. Nothing runs too long. They get as many people on the show as they can. Sometimes they do, like they had with the Suzuki thing last week, run out of time. But overall, I think they do a great job of balancing out their roster, and it's pretty damn cool. So I want to know what you guys think about this. Are you as excited as I am for next week's shows? What do you think about all the storylines they got going into the Arthur Ashe show? I think, and here's a good question, I don't think they're going to be able to beat WWE in overall ratings, although next week is probably the biggest shot they have this year of doing it. Remember, WWE's ratings were down to a 1.67 million from that amazing show they had on Monday where Big E won the WWE Championship. AEW's ratings for this Dynamite were about 1.13 million, so there's still that 400,000 or 500,000 person gap. But again, you have to consider that AEW has been slowly gaining 50,000 this 1 week, 100,000 this week, then they'll go back a little bit, then they'll gain another 100,000. So the trajectory is right now is that I unless something really bad happens and they book terribly or something tragic happens with AEW or WWE hits a new hot streak. If neither of those things happen and things keep going the way they're going, I predict within less than a year, AEW in 1 week is going to beat, not just in the 18 to 49 demo, which they've already now this week, 2 weeks in a row, beaten WWE in the 18 to 49 demo, barely. But I predict within the next year, I'm not going to be surprised if there's a week where AEW beats WWE in total viewership. So let your voice be heard in the comment box below what you think about that, what you think about this edition of Dynamite, what do you think about the Arthur Ashe shows next week, what do you think about how AEW is handling things, some of the places where they're falling apart again, like Lance Archer, like the stuff that's going on with the Gun Club. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, I'll see you guys here for more news, rumors, and commentary on the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. You can check out, where are we at here? Oh, over here. You can check out some of my Let's Plays on the Rantin Review gaming channel, and you can check out some of my watch-alongs for The Walking Dead over here on the Rantin Review Entertainment. I'll see you guys next time here for more on the Rantin Review. Have a good day.